Well, welcome back, everyone. Day two is rolling along. So I am super excited. I've actually been anticipating this next presenter for a few months. And so we have today Alex Diaz, and I'm not gonna steal his thunder, but he he works in the emergency medical services or that background, and he'll go ahead and share. So we'll go ahead and we're gonna hand the baton off to you. Alex, welcome and thank you.
Oh, of course, I appreciate the time. Good morning. My name is Alex Diaz. I appreciate everyone who's able to come today and I get to hear a little bit about what we do. So, emergency medical services, what that means is sometimes it's referred to as EMS. EMS allows us to, when you call 911, to respond to any emergency, whether it's a simple emergency or a life threatening emergency. We do everything from simple splinting of legs and limbs, like ankles and arms, all the way to an unfortunately cardiac arrest. So a lot of our teammates and our workmates, they have either two levels. They have what's called an EMT, emergency medical technician, which is entry level. They do all the technicalities like getting the blood pressure, putting the patient on a cardiac monitor, getting all the information we need so that the second step, paramedics, can make an educated decision as how they're going to treat the patient, whether it's a life threatening emergency, whether it's some medicines, or whether it's some breathing treatments or simple things. So, you heard me talk about EMTs and paramedics. So EMTs, their schooling is about 6 months or a semester's worth of education. I currently teach at Fresno City College, and I am the primary for the day program for the EMT class. And so currently, at the beginning of the semester, we have about 50 students. Our cohort, or the entire program, but we have 2 day classes, 2 night classes. We started out with about 150 students. And so a tremendous workload, a tremendous amount of students who are interested in becoming part of the EMS community. Most of those, because it's a prerequisite or something that they need to have before they join other agencies or departments, like the fire department or the fire academy or the police academy. We teach at a new facility, which is here in Fresno. We call it the First Responder Campus. It is one of the most state-of-the-art facilities here in the state of California. And we have all the academies here, the police academy, the fire academy, and the EMT academy, the EMT program. And we're soon looking to expand to other areas as well. So what you need when you come in an EMT class, we have 18-year-olds that come fresh out of high school that have very to minimal experience in education. We don't have a prereq per se. We would love for you to have a CPR class, but it's not a prerequisite. We also teach that in class. So if you don't have that, we teach it here in class. And the reason why we have the BLS certificate as a nice to have before you come to class is because it teaches you a little bit about how the body works, teaches you a little bit about how under a cardiac arrest situation, what life measures we can do. Now, when you're in EMT class, we also do prefer you take at least a high school anatomy class, a physiology class, because we deal with human beings, we deal with life. So we need to be able to know how the body works. We need to know what the functions are, why the heart pumps, why it pumps the way it does, um, why your vessels, veins, arteries close and open or constrict so that your body can have the proper amount of blood flow to the proper organs exactly when it needs it. The human body is a magnificent machine. And so, in order for us to be able to treat you or your family members, we need to have a good understanding of what the body does and how it works. We call that physiology. And so, once we learn a little bit of physiology, um, we are able to have a better concept when we go to patients' homes. Um, Oftentimes, uh, we don't get to see how the patients are in the textbook. because patients don't always present that way. And so because of that, we have instructors who currently work in the field as EMTs and paramedics who are able to give you real life experience of what you would see in the field. Um, and so we combine that with a textbook, information knowledge, as well as life experience knowledge. So what would you expect when you come to EMT class? We have a textbook. It's rather intimidating, but it's about 1,000. It's about 1,200 pages. That's okay. We're gonna get through the semester. It's daunting. It's intimidating. It's a humongous fat textbook, but that information is a basic or a foundation to you progressing. So in that textbook, we have to learn some technicalities, some little history, and I'll give you some. During the Vietnam War, they had a lot of experience with experimenting in the military with MASH units, mobile hospitals, and mobile clinics. The government decided that that worked so well to treat their military personnel. In the late 1970s, they decided to try to implement that in a civil or public service. So they instituted it through the Department of Transportations. Why they chose to go to that department, I don't know, but we're through the Department of Transportation. So the Department of Transportation um, decided to make a committee or a coalition, and they are called the American Medical Orthopedics Surgeons Committee, because primarily it was for cardiac arrests, broken bones, um, and very, very simple um, procedures. Uh, in the early 1980s, the committee said, "Hey, we need to have a standard. We need to have everybody across the nation be on the same level at the same time." Before that, everybody had different protocols or different standards. So what they would do in Fresno would be different what they would do in Sacramento, which would be different what they do in Los Angeles. And so they started noticing that there would be different rates of patients getting better. So because of that, the Department of Transportation said, we need to have a standard across the board with rules and regulations and education processes. So right around the 1970s, they instituted a policy called the White Papers. And the White Papers allow us to um, have a structure of what the EMS system would look like, or the emergency medical system. So you would have the Department of Transportation that gives you a nationwide guideline. Then they delegate that out to each state. Once each state has their emergency medical services program or um, committee, then the state, like California, will institute their state legislature, their guidelines, their direction. So even though everyone gets to do the same, the state of California can apply for their EMTs and medics to do a little bit extra than the rest of the nation. Or like Texas or Washington, they have even a greater scope of practice where they're able to do a lot more because of their application process to do more. So once the white papers were established, they recognized, hey, every state has a little bit different policies and procedures. So then they instituted a education program, and this committee talks about what they're doing now, how they're going to educate now, and what the 10 or 20-year plan is going to be. So they start learning as statistics. So everything we do in EMS is documented because we want to know that the treatment is rendered appropriately, how many times you go a certain call, what the education is needed, and how effective your treatment has been. Once was established, then the state of California said every county will have its own EMS agency. So it kind of trickles down and down to the local level. Here in Fresno, for example, we have what's called the CCMSA, Central California EMS Agency. Now they have a large area. They have Madera County, Fresno County, Tulare County, and Kings County. So we have approximately about 8,000 to 10,000 paramedics and EMTs that work under one agency. Now, that one agency gives us specific protocols, specific policies to treat. If you live in Sacramento, they have their own policies and procedures. If you live in Los Angeles, they have their own policies and procedures. But everyone across the board has a minimum standard that they have to meet. Whether it's the same equipment, not whether, they have to have the same equipment, they have the same type of devices, they have to have the same type of oxygen containers, the same gurney system. Now it's up to each agency or each department to have at least that minimum standard or better. So that's kind of the premise of how EMS agency works and how it kind of trickled down from 1970s to now. So they have other certificates that they have accepted, like your CPR certificate through American Heart Association. And they use the guidelines that they've used. So doctors, nurses, physician assistants, nurse practitioners, patient care techs, all have the same level of training through the healthcare basic life support system. The more advanced you are, like paramedics, then you get another certificate called the ACLS, American, or the Advanced Cardiac Life Support. Then they recognize that we need to have more training, and kids deserve specialized training. So then the EMS agency or the governing committee decided that we should take a pediatric course, and that's called PALS, Pediatric Advanced Life Support. So we have both training in adults and pediatrics for kids. And then in class, you're going to learn three things. You're going to learn how to treat adults, how to teach geriatric, which is our older ones, and you're going to learn how to treat kids and pediatrics, which is great because the more knowledge you have, the more people you get to help. And that will allow for a greater scope of the public being helped. I want to talk a little bit about professionalism. Once you apply for an EMS position or emergency medical service position, it's usually a stepping stone to other careers. A lot of our paramedics and EMTs will eventually become nurses or physician assistants. I've even had a few students become doctors because it's a great stepping stone. You get to meet a lot of people, you get to treat a lot of patients, and you get to get a good scope of what healthcare is like from an entry level perspective. Now, that professionalism goes a long way because remember, even though we perform a task, even though we perform a service to the community, we're dealing with humans, with life, and we deal with people who are sick. And it might not be an emergency to us, and it might not be an emergency to our partners, but it's their emergency. And so we also have to consider a particular aspect in class, the psychology aspect of what happens in times of crisis and times of emergency. As the years have progressed, our program has gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. Just like healthcare, we recently had an epidemic of COVID. We had to adjust our teaching style, and we had to incorporate all that new data in helping our students be more aware and conscientious about the training that takes so that they can better and effectively treat patients, which makes it difficult because in EMS and in medicine in general, you never can stay at the same subject. We're always evolving, we're always improving, we're always learning more, and there's something better to do and grasp and learn. So medicine is a fast-paced career. Medicine is a very, very difficult career because you have to constantly educate yourself, which is great for those that are in the field of emergency medical services. Because the more you learn, the better you'll be able to treat your patients and treat them. And also remember that just because the patient is having an emergency, the family is also having an emergency. And so sometimes you not only treat the patient, but you're also treating family members, whether it's anxiety, whether it's coping through the emergency. There's a lot more than just treating a patient. And that allows you to be more proactive in your people skills, which is a wonderful quality and a very difficult quality to have if you're a shy and kind of introverted personality. We do a great job here to try to break that barrier so that you can present yourself. Um, no one wants to have a patient or an emergency responder go to their home and be just as anxious as a patient. It doesn't instill confidence. They're not going to have um, that security that you could provide. So we really work hard on your presentation. We work hard on your bedside manners. We work really hard to make sure that you understand that they are people. They're somebody's dad, somebody's mom, somebody's brother, somebody's sister, somebody's son or daughter. Um, and unfortunately, it might be somebody you know, a friend, a relative, a student. I've had plenty of calls where I've responded to previous students, family members, your coworkers, family members, your coworkers' children. So having a base principle or a good understanding of being kind, patient, understanding, um, having patience, all the things that they don't teach you in a textbook, the intangibles, things you can't see. Those are things that we really focus on too, because in medicine, we have to use our mouth, we have to use our voice, and we have to most especially use our ears. And with different platforms like Facebook, Instagram, um, I forgot what Twitter's called now, but Twitter, um, they not everybody is not patients will not text you, will not Facebook you, will not instant message you. You have to learn communication. So in school, when you have availability to take public speaking or English classes or your math and science classes, really, really devote extra time to that because those things are going to be important as you progress in any medical field. Let's say you have an English class. 90% of our job, besides treating patients, which is only 10% of what we do, is documentation. When you document, you have to be articulate. You have to know exactly what you talk about. You also have to learn new language. We call that medical terminology. And so, how we explain things to a patient is not how we're going to explain things to a doctor. And the doctors read our documentation. And then remember, as I told you earlier, all of our documentation is subject to audit because they need that data to see what we did right. Maybe other people can do the same thing or what we did wrong. And so we can learn from that and treat patients more effectively. So documentation in your English class is very, very important class. It allows you to articulate your situations in words so that the patient can be treated better. Public speaking or communications. Um, it, it doesn't just necessarily mean language. It means body language. Imagine if I arrived on scene and I come to your family member and I come like this. What's going on? It doesn't give a good approach. They don't feel confident. They feel it's a standoffish approach. It's a closed loop environment. So you need to learn not just how to ask questions like open-ended questions, closed-ended questions. You need to be able to communicate with your body, communicate through your kindness and your sincerity, and it can be difficult because some patients are not the nicest people. But you have to remember it's their emergency, and they're suffering it through it, and they're trying to cope through it too. So not everything is personal. So that's why your body language and communication skills is a very important skill. Your science classes. Believe it or not, a lot of what you've learned in science will be applicable to what we do in the field, whether you become a nurse, a doctor, whether you work in the fire service, whether you work in EMS, your principles of diffusion, osmosis, your anatomy, your understanding of the body, your understanding of bones. How many do we have? Where are they at? Where they're located? Where vital organs are located? Cellular processes, chemistry. We deal with ions and metabolisms, and we deal with electrolytes, calcium, magnesium, potassium, sodium. Those are fundamental things you learn in school, in your high school, and your course curriculum, so that you can apply that into your knowledge base so that you understand what the patient's dealing with at that time. We'll give a class example, like diabetes. Diabetes is very, very complicated disease process. I'm sure all of us know somebody that has diabetes, or maybe we might have it ourselves. But with that, we have to learn cellular metabolism. We learn about the mitochondria. We learn about the nucleus. We learn about the ribosomes. All of that will play key parts in learning how metabolism works so that your body digests that sugar, that glucogen, that glycolysis, that glycolic process um, as we build on what you've learned in your science classes. So it's important, even though you might think, hey, I'm just going to pass this so I can get my credits or my units. If you plan to do a career in medicine, really take to heart what you learn in those classes. Really put an earnest effort to learn those things. It will eventually pay off in the long run. And we find students that come to class here at the college level that only took those classes half-heartedly, didn't really focus on them. They just wanted to do it to pass the class. And they struggle a little bit with those concepts. It's nothing new if you've taken seriously your courses in high school. Um, we just build on that. And then if you go to a higher level of medical services, you're just going to continue to build on the basis and the foundations you learn in high school. That is kind of where I really want to stress. Do not take for granted the education you're learning now. Do not take the opportunity to ask questions, to divulge yourself in as much as you can to the curriculum that you are structured with and what your teachers, your counselors, your career counselors have afforded you the opportunities to take. Um, we've all been doing it for a long time. Each of us have our own specialty. Each of us have our own thing we like to do, whether it's teaching, whether it's a simple trade, whether it's a complicated trade or profession. We all work together, especially when we do career fairs, because we want to make sure that you have the best opportunity to get the best education possible so that you can be as productive as you can, so that you can be able to take care of your family, be successful in your career, be able to feel good about yourself. And there's nothing better than to put all that effort and have a rewarding career or a rewarding profession. Because of that, you kind of have to put the time in now. You kind of have to put the effort in. No one can train, no one does a mile or a marathon just waking up in the morning and going to run a marathon. We have to train. We have to prepare our bodies. We have to prepare our mind. We have to prepare our thought process. That goes the same with any profession or career that you choose. You have to put in that effort. And trust me, it will pay off. You will feel good about yourself. You'll have that confidence and it'll help your self-esteem too. And you'll look better and feel better about yourself because you put in the hard work and you're doing something that you really want to do. In emergency medical services, um, we train and we study and we educate ourselves for about 5% of the calls. Everything else are what we talked about earlier, intangibles. Sometimes we get calls where people just want to talk. Maybe older ones are just lonely. Maybe they have what's called an empty nest syndrome, where they no longer have children or grandchildren that live in the area and there's no one for them to communicate with. So they're lonely, they're sad, they might even be depressed. Um, the textbook doesn't really talk about those things. It gives you an understanding of what depression, anxiety, things are. But again, learning to communicate, learning to use the material that you've had in class will give you an understanding of how to relate to your family. So just because you are in textbooks and you are with teachers and you are with other students, you still live at home, you still deal with family, you still have cousins and moms and dads and brothers and sisters. And the way you communicate and the way you learn how they feel and understand, that's going to help you in your education process as well. It's just not necessarily textbook. It's all the things that are going around in your life that will help you treat your patient. Every one of us have our own medicine to give. I can't give, I can only give my life experiences, just like you can only give what your life experience is. And trust me, somewhere down the line, someone will benefit from what you've read, from what you've learned, from what you've studied, what you've practiced, and your life experience. Those are going to be beneficial. So career fairs give you a good understanding of not just textbook, but also what's expected as you as a human being. Um, sometimes I give an illustration or I do an exercise with my class. Um, I'll ask them, "Hey, when is the last time you ate with your family?" And we live in a generation where we're fast paced. Mom and dad work. Um, you know, people, we might have multiple family members that we take care of. Maybe mom and dad and grandma and grandpa live with us. Um, but when is the last time you did a random act of kindness uh, to them? So I asked them, let's say you are having dinner with your family on a rare occasion, and you get up to get yourself something to drink. Do you notice if somebody else on the table is also needing something to drink? Do you offer yourself up to do that? Um, most of the time, the students say, no, I just go get something to drink. That's what being a public servant is, doing something for somebody when they don't ask for it. If it's raining and we treat patients that are on their gurney, why not give them a blanket or cover them up so they don't have rain in their face? Or what if it's a cold night? What if it's foggy? Um, do we warm them up? Do we give them a heating pad or a heat pack? Or do we turn the heater on in the unit? All those little things the textbook doesn't show you. That's what we teach in class. A more rounded human being. Here's what is complicated for the program. Once you take our class, you have to have an average of 75 to 80% to pass the class. Once you have a 75 or 80%, then you're able to take what's called the National Registry. That is your state test. Any profession that has to do with medicine, you will have to take a state test. Um, the National Registry is a very difficult test. So what we do in class to train you is what you do in your classroom work. You have homework assignments, you have writing assignments, you'll have assignments that are on deadlines. We do the same thing. Once you finish that module or that subject matter, then you take a module exam or a test or a final or a midterm. We do the same. They have to average a 70% to even take the class final. Once they take the class final, they have to have a 75 or better. Once they take the class final, they have to do a psychomotor exam, which is all the skills you've learned. How to treat patients in cardiac arrest, how to treat patients with a headache, how to treat patients with a stroke, how to treat patients as having a heart attack, asthma, someone in a car accident, how to use the jaws of life, how to treat a patient that's been severely traumatized through abuse. You learn all those things. So we put that in a scenario. Once you pass that scenario, then you're qualified to take the National Registry. Then, once you take your National Registry, you go to your local agency where you live and you take their certification. And then you're able to work. So it's a constant learning process, a constant um, evaluation. And I bring that up as well because nobody likes when a teacher or your parents or a counselor you may feel is hovering over you, telling you you need this assignment, telling you you're running late, you're behind on this, you're not catching up. Um, that will play in this field too because we're constantly being evaluated, we're constantly being critiqued, we're constantly being subjected to counsel or criticism. So we have to be aware that that doesn't just stay in high school. That stays in your profession, your career. Everybody has a supervisor, everybody has a manager, everybody has a boss. And so you're constantly having that. So that training that you get from deadlines and homework assignments and module exams and tests is training as you advance in your process to getting your career you want. So just because it's education, just because it's learning something and you're just doing it to get out of high school, if you are wanting to do a career, take those things that we don't really like, and trust me, I don't like it either. You have to be able to adapt to it, and that will be your training as you grow up in your career. Um, that's pretty much the simple, um, basic understanding of how EMS's education process works, and then how we're able to kind of get a good foundation for you as you advance in your career.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Alex. We'll go ahead if we'll go ahead and open it up to any questions that students have. I did have a question just kind of to get the ball rolling. Um, so yesterday we had someone in the medical industry as well share that they really encourage our students who are in that discovery mode um, to do ride-alongs,
Absolutely.
do ride-alongs, do job shadowing, and I thought that that was wonderful advice. Just having worked with in career technical training programs, I thought, wow, that's awesome. But is that something that you guys offer that Fresno City, I guess your guys' program offers? Does it um, take like students, like let's say in our charter program, you have a senior who's like, or maybe even a junior. I'm really interested in this presentation today, and I kind of want to take the next step and start shadowing. Is that something that Fresno City does, or do you guys give tours of your classrooms, or how does that work?
Oh, absolutely. So let me address first as far as our program. We offer, is everyone from Fresno, or is this throughout the state?
So this is Central Valley. Our students are based in the Central Valley. So yeah,
Everyone's kind of familiar with Fresno area then. So kind of talk about the Fresno area.
should be, yeah.
So here at Fresno City College, or the FRC, the First Responder Campus, I'm the day program primary. So if any student wants to come in and see how the class works and see how we teach class and see the dynamics and the interaction between students, you are 100% free to come in. Um, you can email me, um, which is a very simple email. It's Alex Diaz, Alex.Diaz, Diaz, at FresnoCityCollege.edu. Let me type that out on the chat.
Okay. And another thing too, I can also students can also reach out to me or Blake or someone in our program or on our team, and we could also connect you. We do that a lot of times as we connect. So feel free to do that. And then I think
So
we
we're
have Blake, do you want to take the next question that we have in the chat?
let me add to that real quick.
Oh,
So
go for it. Sorry about that.
once you're in our program, you do have an internship or a 24-hour ride-along program. So once you learn your skills here in the program, we set you up with two 12-hour shifts here locally at American Ambulance or the outlying agencies like Selma Fire, American Ambulance of Visalia, and you ride along, and that crew or that preceptor will help you finesse your skills that you learn in the school and apply it to patient contact, real patient contact. Now, let's say you're like, I don't even want to go that far because I don't know how much effort, or maybe I don't have the stomach for it. You can always, if you're 18 and older, you can always go to American Ambulance. And I happen to work there. If you go to work at America, if you want to, you can do a free ride along for 12 hours once you're 18 and over. Um, and then that will allow you to get a real good perspective if this is something you want to do, or this is not for you. I don't like the blood and guts, or whatever the case may be. Um, they will allow you to do a 12-hour ride along. It does help if you're affiliated with a program, but they do public ride alongs as well, free of charge.
Got
And
it.
so that's always an opportunity for someone who wants to get their a taste of what they're going to get themselves into.
Love it. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
Yeah, thank you. We do have a question in the chat. Just kind of asking if there are any prerequisite classes in order to start the EMT program there at Fresno City College.
So we don't have any prerequisites. We train right from the ground level. As I mentioned earlier, we have 17-year-olds that have graduated high school that will turn 18. We have up to 34-year-olds that 30 to 40-year-olds that take this class as well. There are no prerequisites other than you understand this is a fast-paced, uh, very difficult class just because the amount of work we have to do. That 1,200 pages is a lot to get through. So there are no prerequisites. I recommend that you at least have a CPR certification before you come. Now, again, not a prerequisite. We will teach it in class. It's not a must have, but it's a nice to have.
Awesome. I do have another question for you. With the field, sometimes, as you say, you don't really know what you're going to get from call to call, and I'm sure some things can be difficult maybe to process. I was wondering on the social emotional side, kind of what are some self-care things that maybe you do or others do that kind of help with kind of the rigors of this type of work?
That is a very, very good question. When I first started off 20 years ago, um, it was not really talked about. It was very gritty, kind of you take care of yourself, get over it, let's go. We have other patients to deal with. But as we become more educated and more sensitive to the health, our own self care, our own mental health, there are plenty of things that I do. Um, First and foremost, I'll definitely advertise this. I go to therapy so that I can kind of express myself, whether it's from calls that I had or family situations or my own uh, personalities and things that I deal with that are going to affect how I look at perspective of life. Um, Going to the gym is important. Physical health is important. Sometimes we're not the personality to just talk about our emotions, but if we can do it physically and exert it physically, that's a good thing. Good eating habits are important. Um, just because we treat patients, we don't always take care of ourselves. And that's the part that is unfortunate because a lot of times we do have a high turnover rate or people that don't last in this career because they don't learn how to take care of themselves. It's taken me 20 years to really finesse and to really accept the help that's out there. Now, I've advertised to many people, go get help, go seek doctors, go see therapists. I was a hypocrite. I never took that advice. Only until recently, the last few years, did I actually recognize that I needed help too.
Awesome, thank you. I know, like you said, I mean, taking care of others so often, it's easy sometimes, especially in a public service type role, to lose track of taking care of yourself as well, which is just as much important. Jonathan, do you
Remember,
have
we
any?
lose we lose sleep. We work 12 to 24-hour shifts. Sometimes they're great shifts, and I particularly work a 5 p.m. to 5 a.m. shift, and then I teach during the day twice a week.
Wow.
So sleep is a very much prized treat that I get to have from time to time.
Oh man, I believe it. I mean, I have a difficult time functioning off of 8 to 10 sometimes, and so that is a feat of its own. Jonathan, do you have any other questions?
I was just I have another one that comes to mind. So at the beginning of, I guess towards the beginning of your presentation, you talked about the paperwork. And me not knowing a lot about the emergency medical field, I tell people I'm too clumsy to I'd be tripping over stretchers, and you just don't want me in that field. But hey, we all have different gifts. So you mentioned you alluded to organization. That never occurred to me that organization with paperwork like that would be something. I just thought, oh, you got to be fast paced and calm under pressure. Are there any other skills that you can think of that was like a surprise to me? I'm like, organization. I never really thought of like someone in that type of industry that, organization is of the essence. I always just pictured it like you got to work fast.
Right. Let me kind of give a little detail about that. So let's say I have a patient, and so you have what's called demographics. You'll learn the demographics where it's their name, their birth date, their address, their social security, how they and you need that for record keeping. Then the state and federal levels have certain questions we ask because they also keep statistics. Then you treat the patient. So let's say someone's having a cardiac event or a heart attack. We have structured questions that we ask. So we call it, an acronym is called OPQRST. What was the onset? What was the provocation, or what were you doing when this happened? Um, does it radiate everywhere? What's your severity? How long has this lasted? Do you have any associated symptoms like nausea, vomiting, diarrhea? Or do you have any what's called pertinent negatives? Maybe they don't have nausea, vomiting, diarrhea. All that has to be identified in your documentation. Once you identify that so that you make an educated guess, you have to input your vital signs in that documentation. Once you input that vital signs in your documentation, then you have to write a narrative. What did they call for? What happened? Um, how are they feeling? And then after that, you have to write, this is what I did. This is how they were affected by the medicine. This is how they got better or worse. This is the outcome of the patient, and this is what I turned over to the patient. Then you do all that documentation, and then you have 45 seconds to a minute to explain to a doctor when you're turning him over, hey, I have a 45-year-old female who's complaining of chest pain, non-radiating, sudden onset, provocates, non-provocated, goes to her left arm, rates a 10 out of 10, and it's lasts for the last 30 minutes. So you will have to have good documentation to give a good report ultimately so that your patient gets fast treatment to better enhance their survivability of life.
Thank you so much. That was all I had, Blake. I think I'm going to pass the baton off to you. Any other last questions? Oh, we have one more in the chat. You want to take that one, Blake, and then
Um, you have your textbook. We do uniforms here as well. So all of our students are uniformed just like you'd be out in your profession. So there's uniform pants, uniform shirt. Um, those are all, we have a website devoted to uniforms. So they don't have to go anywhere. They can just order their uniforms online. We have a vendor that prints our labels, our lapel patches, everything that we need so that the student is gets sent to their home. So when they come to class, they're already set. So there is about $1,000 worth of equipment, but again, you're going to use that furthering on. We have the same pants that we use in the at the job. We use the same uniform shirts that they would use in the job. You're going to use your stethoscope throughout the job. You're going to use your blood pressure throughout the job. So it is, I know, a lot at the beginning, but it's definitely an investment.
Awesome, thank you. I guess our final question would just be really quick. If we have students, again, given our virtual environment, some students will have other obligations or watch this recording later on. If they have any questions, as Jonathan and I can compile them together, would that be all right to send that over to you in the coming days, weeks, or months or so?
Oh, absolutely. I also have a devoted counselor here who is specialized in uh, oversees all the academies. So let's say you eventually do want to go to the fire academy, she will help structure your guidance um, program or your course curriculum so that you can get a degree in this particular service. And she's here. Um, she's currently in a meeting. I didn't want her to I didn't invite her to come. She's a wealth of information, great resource, and is very, very helpful to not just the student, but to the parents as well.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I know on the behalf of us and all of our students, we really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to come here and talk to us and talk to our students. Um, and yeah, we just really, really appreciate your time.
No worries. And again, if there's any information or you need pamphlets or you need brochures, we do have some available. So I can either mail it to you or we can work out the details on how to get some of that for your students.
That's
And you
all.
can always look at fresnocity.com and look at our programs there as well.
Awesome, wonderful. Thank you so much. We'll definitely be taking you up on that. Um, Wonderful. And for our students watching, stay tuned. We have our next speakers coming in at 11 o'clock. I believe that's our funeral director and embalmer. So should be an interesting one to check out. Again, thank you so much, Alex, for coming in and speaking to everybody. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you. I appreciate the time.